Fleet Admiral Takthar stood on the command deck of the Rizak Federation's flagship, Eternal Dominion, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched the swirling vortex of hyperspace collapse around his fleet. The transition back to normal space rippled across the viewscreens, revealing the darkness of an unexplored system illuminated by a distant yellow star. His outer eyes tracked the status displays while his inner pair focused on the central tactical hologram. Status report, he chittered, mandibles clicking with practiced authority. Around him, the bridge crew's carapaces gleamed under the soft blue lighting as they worked at their stations. 32 vessels reporting successful emergence. Admiral, First Observer Nixtal announced from the sensor pit. Her antennae twitched as she processed the incoming data. All ships maintaining formation. No damage reported from the transition. Takthar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The 12th expansion fleet represented the finest ships in the Federation's arsenal, each one a testament to 10,000 years of Rizak engineering. Their very presence had ended wars before they began. Primitive civilizations often surrendered at the mere sight of their arrival. Beginning system scan, Nixtal continued. Detecting numerous artificial satellites in orbit around the third planet. Primitive radio waves, electromagnetic emissions consistent with early spacefaring species. Her mandibles clicked in amusement. They haven't even achieved reliable fusion power yet. The Admiral's upper arms reached for his ceremonial staff of office, a gesture that had preceded the conquest of 17 systems. Another easy victory for the Glorioff. Admiral. Nixtal's voice carried an unfamiliar note of concern, detecting an anomalous energy signature near the system's ice belt. Takthar's antennae stiffened. Clarify. The main view screen shifted, focusing on a distant object. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a basic mining vessel, its hull a patchwork of metal plates and crude propulsion systems, but something about it made his prey instincts twitch. Energy readings are inconsistent, Nixtal reported, her claws dancing across her console. The vessel's power signature keeps fluctuating. Our scanners can't get a reliable lock on its mass or composition. Interference from the ice belt, nothing more. War leader Vextor dismissed from his battle station. These primitive species often hide their resource extraction operations in such regions. It's probably using outdated shielding technology that's confusing our sensors. Takthar studied the image. The vessel's design was utterly foreign to his eyes. No smooth curves or elegant biomechanical integration like Arzak ships. Instead, it bristled with what appeared to be crude weapons emplacements and angular sensor arrays. Its hull bore markings in an unknown script, and what looked like battle scars marked its surface. Curious design for a mining ship, he mused. Those look like weapon ports. Hardly worth calling them weapons. Admiral, Vextor chittered. My scans indicate they're based on primitive chemical propulsion. Kinetic weapons. His tone dripped with derision. They're still throwing rocks at their enemies. The bridge crew shared a moment of amusement, but Takthar noticed Nixtal wasn't laughing. Her antennae were fully extended, vibrating with tension as she continued to study her readings. Admiral, she said slowly, the energy fluctuations. They're not random. There's a pattern, but it doesn't match anything in our database. And the whole composition. She trailed off, mandibles working nervously. Speak freely. First Observer. Sir, our most powerful scanning beams are being absorbed, or reflected, or something else entirely. I've never seen anything like it. Takthar waved two of his arms dismissively. A curious anomaly, nothing more. This system is ripe for conquest. Prepare the standard ultimatum broadcast. Let's see how quickly these primitives surrender when they realize what they're facing. As his crew moved to comply, Takthar kept his inner eyes fixed on the distant vessel. Something about it troubled him, tickled at instincts honed by decades of military service. But he pushed the feelings aside. After all, no primitive civilization had ever posed a real challenge to a Rizak battle fleet. He was about to learn how costly such assumptions could be. Begin Standard Conquest Protocol, Kazakthar commanded, his voice echoing across the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. The communications officer's claws danced across gleaming biocircuits, preparing the broadcast that had heralded the fall of countless civilizations. The message boomed out in 300 languages, each one carefully crafted to instill despair. Attention primitive species, you faced the 12th expansion fleet of the Rizak Federation. Your technology is inferior. Your defenses are inadequate. Your resistance would be futile. Surrender now and accept your place as servants of the Federation, or face immediate annihilation. Zakthar's bridge crew waited for the familiar response. Panicked transmissions, desperate pleas for mercy, or the occasional futile declaration of defiance. Instead, their communication arrays detected a signal being broadcast on their own encrypted command frequency. How interesting. The voice was smooth, almost amused. You boys really need some new material. That speech is about as intimidating as a recruitment poster for summer camp. The bridge fell silent. Kazakthar's antennae twitched violently as he processed what he just heard. Impossible, he chittered. This is a secure military channel. Identify yourself. Captain Michael Anderson of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Defiant Dawn. The human's voice carried a hint of swagger that made Kazakthar's carapace bristle. You boys picked the wrong neighborhood for your little invasion routine. War Leader Vexter's mandibles clacked in outrage. How dare you address the Admiral of the 12th Fleet with such disrespect? Your primitive vessel will be reduced to atoms for this insult. A chuckle came through the speakers. Primitive. That's cute. Tell me, how's your long-range sensor network doing? Notice anything missing? Nixtal's claws flew across her console. Admiral, our perimeter scanners are offline. All of them. Impossible. Vextor spat. Our technology is beyond their capability to. Oh, those things. Anderson's voice carried the audible equivalent of a shrug. Yeah, we shut those down about 3 minutes ago. Pretty basic counter-electronic warfare. Did you really think those quantum-encrypted channels were secure? We cracked that algorithm last Tuesday. Zaktthar felt his first stirring of genuine concern. The human was speaking with the easy confidence of a predator, not the desperate bravado of prey. You dare to threaten the might of the Rizak Federation. One primitive vessel against 32 warships. 32. Anderson's voice took on a note of mock concern. Hold on, let me check my count. A pause. Nope, I'm seeing 31 now. You might want to check on that destroyer on the edge of your formation. The one that's about to lose power to its main reactor. As if on cue, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical display showed the destroyer's swift vengeance going dark, its biomechanical systems shutting down one by one. What did you do? Kazaktthar demanded, all four hands clenching into fists. Just a demonstration. Anderson's tone hardened. Here's the deal. You've got exactly 5 minutes to start moving your fleet out of our space. After that, we stop playing nice. The bridge erupted in chittering laughter, though Kazaktthar noticed it held a nervous edge. You expect us to retreat from a single vessel? He asked, forcing confidence into his voice. Not really, Anderson replied cheerfully. Actually, I'm kind of hoping you stick around. We've got a whole suite of new weapon systems to test, and LEV targets are so much better than simulations. Plus, the research and development team gets really excited when we bring back alien tech to study, especially the intact pieces. Before Kazaktthar could respond, Nixtal called out in alarm. Admiral, the human vessel. It's changing. On the main view screen, the Defiant Dawn seemed to shimmer, its hull plates shifting and realigning. What had appeared to be simple armor plating now bristled with weapon ports and sensor arrays that had been perfectly concealed moments before. Last chance, Anderson's voice carried an edge of anticipation. Withdraw or help us advance human military science. Your choice. Kazaktthar's pride won out over his instincts. "Launch the Swift Victory," he commanded. "Show these impudent humans the price of defiance." The human's final transmission sent a chill through his carapace. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Swift Victory glided forward from the Razak formation, its biomechanical hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Commander Rectal stood proudly on his bridge, mandibles clicking in anticipation. His ship represented the pinnacle of Razak engineering, the newest light cruiser in the fleet, with weapons that could reduce continents to slag. "Target locked," his gunnery officer announced, though the targeting computer keeps trying to recalibrate. Rectal chittered dismissively. "Primitive countermeasures. Nothing more." He studied the human vessel through the main viewport, watching as it hung motionless against the backdrop of the ice belt. "Status of their weapons systems. Uncertain, Commander." His sensor officer's antennae twitched nervously. "The ship's profile keeps shifting. One moment our scans show it as barely larger than a scout vessel. The next it reads as massive as a dreadnought. And the energy signatures." She trailed off, manipulating her controls with increasing frustration. "What about them?" "They make no sense, sir. It's as if the ship exists in multiple states simultaneously. Some kind of quantum uncertainty field, but far beyond anything in our database." The human vessel's appearance seemed to ripple, its surface flowing like liquid metal. What had appeared to be simple hull plates transformed into complex geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. "Fascinating design," the science officer commented, his inner eyes fixed on rapidly scrolling data. "The hull appears to incorporate metamaterials we've never encountered. The surface geometry itself seems to be mathematically impossible." "Enough," Rectal snapped. "These humans think they can intimidate us with parlor tricks. Show them the price of such arrogance. All batteries, open fire." The Swift Victory's weapon ports flowered open, biomechanical targeting systems acquiring their lock. Energy built in crescending waves as the cruiser's main batteries prepared to fire. Now receiving transmission from the human vessel, communications reported. "Ignore it," Rectal commanded. "They've had their chance, Toe. You really might want to hear this." Captain Anderson's voice cut through anyway, overriding their communications protocols as if they didn't exist. "Those Mark 7 plasma cannons you're spinning up. Yeah, we've got some thoughts about those." Rectal's mandibles clicked in shock. "How do you know our weapons designation?" "Oh, we've been studying you folks for a while now. Did you know your plasma containment fields have a harmonic resonance at exactly 4.3 terahertz? Fascinating stuff. Watch this." The Defiant Dawn pulsed with a barely visible wave of energy. Instantly, every warning light on the Swift Victory's bridge blazed red. "Plasma containment is stabilizing," the gunnery officer shouted. "Fields are collapsing." "Impossible." Rectal gripped his command podium. "Fire. Fire everything." The cruiser's weapons discharged in a devastating barrage, enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. But as the energy weapons approached the human vessel, something extraordinary happened. The space around the Defiant Dawn seemed to twist, the very fabric of reality warping like a heat mirage. Every shot curved inward, caught in spiraling vortices of distorted spacetime. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Anderson's voice held genuine enthusiasm. "We call it the Einstein-Rosen defense matrix. Basically creates thousands of micro-wormholes to redirect energy weapons. Our physicists had a field day with this one. Want to see what we do with all that power you just gave us?" The human ship's hull began to glow with absorbed energy, patterns of light racing across its surface in mesmerizing waves. Points of brilliant radiance gathered at strategic locations along its length. "Full evasive," Rectal ordered, but before his crew could respond, Anderson spoke again. "Too late. Thanks for the weapons test data, by the way. Our targeting systems needed calibrating." The Defiant Dawn moved with impossible grace, its form blurring as if it existed in multiple places simultaneously. Rectal had one final thought before everything went white. They weren't dealing with primitives. They were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. The swift Victory hung suspended in space, its weapons dispersing harmless energies into the void. On its bridge, Commander Rectal watched in disbelief as his ship's most powerful attack was absorbed into the swirling vortices surrounding the human vessel. Warning indicators flashed across every console as their sensors tried to make sense of what they were witnessing. Impossible, the science officer whispered, all four eyes fixed on his readings. They're not just absorbing the energy, they're restructuring it at the quantum level. The computational power required for such precise manipulation would be receiving power spike from the human vessel. The sensor officer cut in, her voice rising in pitch. Energy signatures are off the scale. Captain Anderson's voice returned, carrying a hint of satisfaction. Now, pay attention, because this is where it gets interesting. Remember how I mentioned we've been studying your technology? Well, we've had plenty of time to develop countermeasures. The Defiant Dawn's hull rippled with captured energy, patterns of light coursing through geometric channels that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist. A single weapon port opened at its prow, looking deceptively simple compared to the Rizak's biomechanical armaments. That's just a railgun, Rectal said, mandibles clicking in nervous laughter. A primitive kinetic weapon. Against our shields. Almost right. Anderson replied cheerfully. Though calling it just a railgun is like calling a supernova just a star going pop. This is the Mark IV quantum tunneling mass driver. We thought about giving it a fancier name, but sometimes simple is better. The weapon fired. There was no dramatic energy buildup, no blinding flash, just a simple projectile accelerating to relativistic speeds. The Rizak crew barely had time to register its launch before it struck. The round passed through their shields as if they didn't exist, its quantum state allowing it to ignore conventional barriers. With surgical precision, it severed the main power conduits to the ship's neural network, avoiding any critical systems that might cause a catastrophic detonation. Alarms blared as system after system went dark. The swift Victory's biomechanical components, cut off from their central control, began shutting down in cascading failure. Neural network severed. The engineering officer screeched. We've lost primary power. Backup systems failing. How? Rectal demanded, his carapace pale with shock. Our shields are rated to stop any physical projectile. That's the neat thing about quantum tunneling, Anderson explained, as if giving a lecture. Your shields are designed to stop things that exist in normal space. Our round technically didn't exist in your dimension until after it passed through your defenses. Pretty cool, right? The swift Victory drifted helplessly, its once proud systems reduced to minimal emergency power. Around them, the ice belt's crystals reflected distant starlight, turning their humiliation into a macabre-like show. Don't worry, Anderson continued, his tone almost gentle. We made sure not to hit anything vital. Your life support will hold, and we left you enough power to broadcast what happened here. Consider this a professional courtesy, one warrior to another. On the flagship Eternal Dominion, Admiral Xakthar watched in horror as his most advanced cruiser hung dead in space, neutralized by a single shot from what they had dismissed as a primitive weapon. Admiral, Nixtal reported, her voice shaking. I'm detecting energy buildups across the human vessel's hull. They're redirecting the power they absorbed from the swift Victory. Multiple weapon systems are coming online. All ships, battle formations. Xakthar commanded, but even as he gave the order, he knew something had fundamentally changed. They had come expecting to find primitives cowering before their superior technology. Instead, they had found something far more dangerous, a species that had spent years preparing specifically for this moment. The Defiant Dawn began to move, its hull now blazing with captured energy, ready to demonstrate exactly why humanity had earned its reputation among the stars. As Captain Anderson prepared his next attack, he broadcast one final message. Now, who wants to help us test our other weapon systems? Admiral Cakthar's command center aboard the Eternal Dominion had descended into barely controlled chaos. Status reports flooded in from across the fleet as ships frantically scanned the human vessel, trying to understand what they were facing. Admiral. First observer Nick Stahl's voice cut through the chittering confusion. We're intercepting transmissions between the human ship and our command. They're not even trying to encrypt them. Put them through, Cakhtar ordered, all four hands gripping his command staff. Let's hear what these humans are saying. The bridge speakers crackled to life with Captain Anderson's voice. Test sequence Alpha 7 complete. Control. Quantum tunneling mass driver performed exactly as predicted. Moving on to Phase 2 of the weapons evaluation. A different voice responded, clinical and precise. Excellent work, Captain. The research division is particularly interested in shield penetration data. Please ensure comprehensive scanning during the next series of tests. Cakthar's antennae went rigid. Tests, he whispered. Sir, the encryption specialist's claws flew across his console, breaking through their communication security, accessing their tactical database. By the first egg. The main holographic display filled with technical readouts, weapon schematics, test protocols, performance metrics. The truth hit like a physical blow. They hadn't stumbled upon a primitive civilization's warship. They'd walked into a carefully orchestrated weapons testing ground. The Defiant Dawn isn't just a ship, the specialist continued, his voice trembling. It's a mobile testing platform. Everything about it. The metamaterial hull, the quantum state drives, the energy absorption systems, they're all prototypes. Experimental weapons designed specifically to counter known alien combat technologies. How? War leader Vextor demanded. How could they have known our capabilities? We've never encountered humans before. But they've encountered us, Nick Stahl realized, her inner eyes widening. Those missing deep space expeditions over the past decade, the ones we assumed were lost in navigation errors or cosmic phenomena. The encryption specialist nodded. They've been studying us. All of us. Not just the Rizak Federation. I'm seeing combat data on the Kraken Collective, the Nexus Concordat, even the Shadow Broods. They've been intercepting our ships, analyzing our technology, and developing countermeasures. All in secret. A new transmission cut through their revelation. Control, this is Captain Anderson. Request permission to begin testing of the temporal phasing array. We've got some eager volunteers. Permission granted, Captain. Remember to maintain enough hull integrity for specimen recovery. The engineering division has requested intact examples of their biomechanical systems. Cakhtar felt his carapace grow cold as the implications sank in. His mighty fleet, pride of the Federation, had been reduced to a laboratory experiment. And somewhere out there, in human space, multiple quantum signature detections. Nick Stahl shouted, new contacts appearing throughout the system. The tactical display bloomed with signals. Massive construction facilities hidden in asteroid fields, shipyards concealed beneath the ice of outer moons, and everywhere, more ships like the Defiant Dawn under construction. This isn't their first warship. Cakhtar realized, horror creeping into his voice. It's their prototype. The test model for an entire fleet. The Defiant Dawn began to move again, its hull now crackling with barely contained energies. New weapon ports opened along its length, each one promising a different form of devastation. Now then, Anderson's voice returned to their command channel. Who's ready to help us calibrate our antimatter cascade projectors? Don't worry. Our simulations suggest at least 60% of your crew should survive the exposure. We think. Hard to be sure without live testing data. As his fleet moved to battle stations, Admiral Cakhtar finally understood the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't been hiding in fear of the galaxy's powers. They had been preparing, analyzing, and building. And now, they were ready to show the stars exactly what they had learned. All ships, Combat Formation Delta. Admiral Ksakhthar commanded, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his thorax. Concentrate all fire on their weapon ports. No matter how advanced, no ship can withstand the combined firepower of our fleet. The remaining Arzak vessels moved with practiced precision, forming an attack sphere around the Defiant Dawn. Biomechanical weapon arrays pulsed with gathered energy as targeting computers locked onto the human vessel. Such a beautiful formation, Captain Anderson commented on the open channel. Really, textbook stuff. Mind if we record this? The tactical division loves analyzing classic maneuvers. Helps us design better countermeasures. Fire! Ksakhthar roared. All ships, fire everything. The void erupted in apocalyptic fury. Plasma lances, quantum disruptors, and graviton beams converged on the human ship from 30 different angles. The combined barrage could have cracked a small moon. For a moment, the Defiant Dawn vanished in the blinding storm of energy. Energy spike. Nick Stahl called out. They're doing something with our weapons fire. The maelstrom of energy around the human vessel began to spiral inward, drawn into the mysterious patterns etched across its hull. The metamaterial surface pulsed with captured power, geometric designs shifting in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. Thanks for that, Anderson said cheerfully. We've been wanting to test our absorption capacity at full load. Now, watch closely. This next part is really something. The Defiant Dawn moved. Not the normal movement of a starship, but something else, as if it existed in multiple places simultaneously, each position bleeding into the next. Targeting computers screamed in electronic confusion as they tried to track a vessel that seemed to occupy several points in spacetime at once. Quantum superposition drive, Anderson explained, as if lecturing a class. Lets us exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. Makes us pretty hard to hit. But that's not the cool part. The cool part is what we do with all that lovely energy you just gave us. Weapon ports opened along the human ship's length, each one glowing with repurposed power. What followed was a demonstration of warfare unlike anything in Razak military history. The first shot was a concentrated beam of chronometric energy that struck the heavy cruiser Vengeful Glory. Its hull aged 10,000 years in seconds, biomechanical systems withering and dying as entropy accelerated beyond control. The second attack came in the form of microscopic wormholes that appeared inside the shields of 3 destroyers, bypassing their defenses completely before detonating with precise force. Enough to disable but not destroy. Fascinating results on the localized space-time disruption, Anderson commented to his control center. Though the quantum entanglement cascade could use some fine-tuning, making notes for the engineering team. A third weapon fired, a spread of what appeared to be simple missiles. The Razak point defense systems destroyed them easily, only to watch in horror as the resulting explosions spawned self-replicating fields of null space that began eating away at their ships' hulls. That's our void corruption warheads, Anderson noted, still experimental, but showing promise. The null space propagation rate is better than projected. Ship after ship fell silent or drifted crippled as the Defiant Dawn methodically worked through its arsenal. Each weapon was different, each attack testing a new theory of warfare, each strike carefully calibrated to gather maximum data while leaving enough survivors to carry the message home. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Ksakhthar watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by what amounted to a scientific research vessel. His greatest ships, pride of the Federation, reduced to test subjects in humanity's endless drive to perfect the art of war. Final phase of weapons testing commencing, Anderson announced. I'd recommend all non-essential personnel evacuate to emergency shelters. We're about to demonstrate our gravity manipulation systems, and artificial mass can do funny things to organic tissue. Don't worry. The effects are usually temporary. As the human vessel's hull began to ripple with new patterns of captured energy, Ksakhthar realized that this wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a preview of humanity's coming dominance of the stars. Admiral Cathar stood amid the wreckage of his command center, emergency lights casting shadows across fallen debris. Half his bridge crew lay unconscious from the gravity distortions, while the rest worked frantically at damaged consoles. The mighty Eternal Dominion, flagship of the 12th Fleet, drifted powerless among the scattered hulks of its escort vessels. "Admiral," Nixtal called weakly from her station, her carapace cracked but her dedication unwavering. "Priority transmission from High Command. They're responding to our distress signal." "Put it through," Cathar ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the Grand Admiral of the Federation fleet. Her expression froze as she took in the devastation visible behind Cathar. "Report," she commanded. How did a single human vessel do this? Before Cathar could respond, the encryption specialist's console lit up with urgent warnings. "Admiral, deep space sensors are detecting, by the first egg, massive quantum signatures throughout the system." The tactical display came alive with new contacts. Hidden shipyards emerged from gravitational masking fields around gas giants. Construction facilities decloaked from within asteroid fields. And everywhere, ships, dozens of them, hundreds, all bearing the same distinctive geometric patterns as the Defiant Dawn. "This isn't possible," War Leader Vextor whispered, his mandibles trembling. "Our intelligence said they were confined to their solar system, that they had barely achieved spaceflight. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see," Captain Anderson's voice cut in, somehow still broadcasting despite their damaged communications. "Those primitive radio signals, carefully crafted decoys, those basic satellites, camouflage for our sensor network. We've been watching every major spacefaring race for decades, preparing for the day one of you decided to test our defenses." The Grand Admiral's hologram crackled with static as she processed this information. "How many?" she demanded. "Current deep space scans show." Nixtal's voice faltered. "Over 500 vessels of similar design to the Defiant Dawn in various stages of completion. Production facilities scattered throughout their territory suggest they could produce thousands more within months. But the Defiant Dawn itself," Anderson added cheerfully, "that's just the prototype. The test bed. Wait until you see what the production models can do." Speaking of which, new energy signatures bloomed across their sensors as massive hangar doors opened in hidden facilities across the system. Sleek warships emerged, their hulls incorporating refined versions of the technologies that had just decimated the Razak fleet. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Anderson's voice carried genuine pride. "We took everything we learned from this encounter, all the performance data, all the combat metrics, and fed it straight to our production lines. Real-time weapons testing and implementation. Quite efficient, really." The Grand Admiral's hologram turned to Cathar, all four eyes wide with horror. "They didn't just defeat you," she realized. "They used you to perfect their weapons." "To be fair," Anderson interjected, "we're grateful for the assist. There's only so much you can learn from simulations. Having live targets really helped us work out the kinks in our defense systems. As a token of appreciation, we're letting you leave with enough functioning ships to spread the word." A new transmission cut through the channel, a human admiral addressing the Razak leadership directly. "The Defiant Dawn has completed its testing phase successfully. Production of the Mark II series will commence immediately. Consider this a formal notification. Earth is now a sovereign military power. Any further incursions into human space will be met with overwhelming force." As the few remaining functional ships of his fleet prepared for emergency withdrawal, Admiral Cathar watched the human warships taking up defensive positions throughout the system. Each one incorporated improvements based on the very battle they had just fought. They hadn't just lost a fight. They had helped humanity forge the weapons that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. The last thing he heard before they jumped to hyperspace was Captain Anderson's voice. "Thanks for participating in our field tests. Feel free to tell everyone what you saw here today. In fact, we insist. The Grand Assembly of the Rizak Federation had never been so silent. Hundreds of noble houses, military commanders, and colonial governors watched the holographic replay of the Defiant Dawn's demonstration. Admiral Kakthar stood before them, his carapace still bearing scars from the encounter, as he delivered his report. The humans didn't just defeat us, he concluded, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. They used us as a testing ground. Every shot we fired, every tactic we employed, every defense we mounted, all of it was analyzed, countered, and improved upon in real time. The Grand Admiral rose from her seat, all four arms clasped behind her back. And now, Kakthar activated a new hologram, showing the latest deep space reconnaissance. Now they've launched what they call the Anderson-class warships. Each one incorporates improvements based on our encounter. They named the class after the captain who demonstrated humanity's capabilities to the galaxy. The assembly erupted in concerned chittering as the images played out. Sleek vessels patrolling human space, their hulls bearing the same mysterious geometric patterns as the Defiant Dawn. But these ships were clearly more refined, more purposeful in their design. Our analysts estimate their production capacity at 50 ships per month. Kakthar continued. But that's not the worst part. Show them the diplomatic transmission. The hologram shifted to show Captain Anderson, now wearing an admiral's insignia, addressing the gathered races of the galaxy. His casual confidence had evolved into something more formal, but no less intimidating. To all spacefaring civilizations, the Sol system and its surrounding sectors are now under the protection of the Earth Defense Force. We have shared the technical specifications of our defensive capabilities with every major power. This is not a threat. It's a courtesy. We believe in transparent deterrence. The recording continued, showing demonstrations of improved weapon systems, enhanced defensive technologies, and revolutionary propulsion methods. Each one carefully documented, their capabilities clearly outlined. It was perhaps the most terrifying peace offering in galactic history, humanity showing exactly what would happen to anyone who challenged them. They're not hiding their strength, the Grand Admiral observed. They're advertising it. Because they don't need to hide anymore, Kakthar replied. In the 3 months since our encounter, 17 different species have requested diplomatic relations with Earth. The Kraken Collective has signed a non-aggression pact. Even the Shadow Broods are keeping their distance. A colonial governor raised her appendages, and the Defiant Dawn itself retired to Earth's Military Museum of Innovation, Kakthar answered. They've turned it into a monument, a reminder of the day humanity announced its presence to the stars not through diplomacy or trade, but through unquestioned military superiority. The Grand Admiral's antennae twitched thoughtfully. And what of this Anderson? What became of the human who humbled our greatest fleet? He oversees their Defense Forces Research and Development Division now. I'm told he uses our encounter as a teaching example for new officers. His favorite lecture is titled, How to Turn an Invasion into a Product Test. Nervous laughter rippled through the assembly, quickly fading as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just survived first contact with one of the galaxy's premier military powers, they had used it to perfect their warfare technology. Let the record show, the Grand Admiral announced, that the Rizak Federation formally recognizes Earth as a sovereign military power. Furthermore, I am ordering the establishment of a permanent diplomatic mission to human space. We must ensure we never again mistake preparation for primitiveness. As the assembly concluded, Kakthar studied the final image in his report, the Defiant Dawn in its museum berth, a plaque beneath it reading, Here stands the ship that changed the galaxy. Below that, in smaller text, Our first test model. In the years that followed, that day became known as Anderson's lesson, the moment when the galaxy learned that humans don't just adapt to war, they revolutionize it. The sight of a human warship entering any system became enough to make alien fleets change course. They all remembered the lesson. Underestimate humanity at your peril. For in the vast darkness between the stars, the geometric patterns of human warships had become a warning symbol, carrying the simple message: we were never hiding in fear. We were preparing. And now, we're ready.